Most relationships don't work out, and that's a feature, not a bug. Now everyone gets upset, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be. I mean, breakups are rough. They can be rough depending on, especially on how the breakup goes down. Certainly, I've had several, horrible breakups. Horrible as in the experience was horrible, not horrible as in the person was horrible. But that's the reality. The reality is relationships only end in two ways: breakup or death. And I mean, because someone actually dies from disease or old age or whatever. And the reality is very few people stay in the same relationship until they die. It's very rare. I don't know what the numbers are, but I think most people would say that they have dated more than 10 people to get one person they decide is worth marrying. So if you just look at that, that means at least 90% of your relationships that won't work out in terms of leading to marriage. And then the marriage rate shows that even marriage doesn't mean that a relationship works out in the sense of together until death do us part. So you have to enter with the understanding that relationship breakups are a part of dating and that divorce is a part of marriage. It's not to say that you should expect or not put in the effort to minimize the chances of that happening. You definitely should. But it also means that you need to prepare yourself for that possibility and that eventuality rather than rushing in with your fingers crossed, hoping for the best and not setting things up in such a way that you are at least mentally prepared for them to go badly, or let's say to not go the way that you want. So when it comes to a breakup, from my perspective, a breakup is a great learning experience. In addition to it being potentially a painful experience, it's a great learning experience because you can examine that relationship and you can see both how you could do things better. And that means not only in terms of how you manage that relationship, but also in terms of your selection criteria. Many times when people look back at relationships, they go, you know what, I shouldn't have been with that person in the first place. Or they might think, I let that relationship run too long because laziness is a very common reason, because it was so comfortable without thinking about it much. And so they just let it kind of run. So breakups are a great opportunity to self-reflect and to learn. A lot of times, for many people, breakups is the only way that they learn. It is very common, and I'd say this is more true of guys than it is for girls, this particular point, which is that because women tend to focus on the relationship more than guys do, that for many guys, it's not until the relationship ends that they really take the time to step back and recognize where they were not giving that relationship the time and attention it really needed for it to be successful. My mom used to say, marriage is the hardest job you'll ever love. And what she meant by that, obviously, is that marriage is hard work. And, marriage is just any kind of relationship. It's just generally harder to end because your lives are so much more entangled, so there's more incentive to work at it. But that also means because your life is more entangled, it also means that you can get more from it. You can think of it like, if you look at relationships on a continuum, you can think of like on one end you have, let's say, the booty call. Okay, well, that is a type of relationship, right? It's like you're horny, you message a girl, she comes over and you have sex with her. Or reverse, you're horny, you message a guy, you go over to his place. Doesn't matter which way you look at it. But anyway, the point is that is a kind of relationship. And people don't get that much out of it, right? The only thing you really get out of it is sex. But with let's say a slightly deeper relationship, let's say a monogamish, undefined relationship, in addition to the sex, you probably have an activity partner. All right, so maybe you go and do some things together, and so that's something additional that you get, because outside of the enjoyment of doing that activity on your own, you get the additional enjoyment of doing it with somebody else, and you get the enjoyment of them doing it and you pinging that enjoyment off of them, which adds to your own enjoyment too. Okay, so that's another level of something that you can get. But as relationships deepen, there can be more and more things besides a sexual partner and an activity partner. On the other side, in the kind of extreme way, you have a co-parent, let's say, as an example, or you have kids as another example. Those are some other values that you can get, but what you get out of your relationship is really up to you. For many people, the part of what they get from their partner is exposure to options, ideas, experiences that they wouldn't choose on their own. So that's another thing that you can get. A lot of times it's about you can get access to a network that you wouldn't generally have access to. You have someone who is a teammate and is willing to help and support you in attaining your goals. You have a sounding board who you can ping ideas off of and use as someone to help you kind of mastermind your life plans and goals. You can have someone, for some people, there is a strong financial aspect to their relationship with their partner, whether that is someone who helps them manage their finances, or whether that's someone who brings finances into the relationship, which allows them as a couple to do more. That's another example. I mean, there's of course the emotional support that you can get from someone when you're going through a tough time. There are so many possible things you can get out of a relationship a good relationship. And for many people, they think it's really worth the effort of putting in the time to be able to get those other things. Now, someone else might feel that not as many that it doesn't have as many benefits, or that out of those benefits, they only care about a small number of those things. So when you break up or have a breakup, it's a time for you to look and examine what you were getting out of the relationship, whether you were getting out what you wanted from it, what you weren't getting out of it, and why. Were you not getting enough out of it because that person didn't have the ability to give you what you wanted? Or were they unwilling to give you what you wanted because you didn't give them enough of what they wanted, right? In which case, there may be a negotiation problem here. Now, people don't generally think of relationships as negotiation, but relationships are very much a negotiation, because you want certain things and they want certain things. And if they're going to give you certain things, they are going to, first of all, they're going to need to sacrifice other things that they could be doing with their time and energy that aren't what you want them to do. And secondly, they're going to expect to get something for what they're putting in. And I think this is a common problem in the modern world, is that the demise of gender roles has meant that before, what you were supposed to put into the relationship was defined by your gender, essentially. And there was a few outliers, but it was primarily defined by your gender. And now, gender is no longer the deciding factor of what you should be bringing to the relationship. And so because of that, we don't really know what we should be bringing to the relationship. Now, typically, what people want to bring to the relationship is the things that they're already good at, right? I mean, because those are the things that are easy for them to bring. So they want to bring the things that they're good at. And ideally, their partner doesn't care that much about the stuff they're not good at, which sometimes is the case, but sometimes isn't. Oftentimes isn't. And so because of the fact that society no longer dictates what you should be bringing, you now have to negotiate that with your partner. And the negotiation is supposed to be a mutually beneficial negotiation, but it is a challenging aspect of relationships because we don't really learn how to do it, first of all. And second of all, because we don't grow up with that as the paradigm of the relationship. We grow up with it as two people who love each other and things just kind of work out. And not with the idea of a problem-solving exercise, right? See, the way that I think about a relationship is, okay, we both want this relationship to work, presumably. Otherwise, why would you be in it in the first place? So presumably you both want the relationship to work. Now, what do you need for you to want to stay in that relationship and to give her what she wants and vice versa? What do you need in the relationship to be able to give him what he wants and be satisfied? And so that is the constant challenge of relationships, and especially because these things are not static, they change over time. So what you want now isn't necessarily the same as what you want 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And this throws a lot of guys off. They meet a girl when she's 27, for example, and she's not interested in having kids, but now she's 32 and you've been together 5 years and now she wants to have kids. And maybe you as a guy feel, wait a minute, what's going on here? I thought she wasn't interested in having kids. Now, the thing that you should always recognize as a guy is that it's very common that women want to have kids as they get older, especially if they are in an ongoing relationship. So that should be something that should be in the back of your mind, even if she has expressed that she's not interested. Now that's one example. Maybe that's just one example. Another example might be that you can have a relationship, or I've heard of many relationships where people traveled a lot. And then at some point, one of them decides they don't really want to travel as much and they want to have a more settled life and they want to have like a nice environment that is comfortable and that they're used to, and they want to maybe, buy an apartment or buy a home or something like that. And now the needs are different. And so these things can also be a reason to break up if you decide that there's no way to reconcile the things that you both want. And so that's why I would say that I think that one of the reasons breakups can be so horrible, at least, and in my case, one of the reasons they were so horrible is because there was this underlying belief that if you love each other, then you should be able to go however far is necessary to make the other person happy. And for me, I certainly felt that when I was younger, and I thought, wow, I told this woman that I love her and now I'm not willing to do certain things. And so there was this conflict for me where I felt like I was this bad guy for not being willing to do the stuff that she wanted while saying and feeling that she was someone I really loved. There's that classic Meatloaf song, I would do anything for love, but I won't do that. And I remember growing up, I thought, what? I don't understand. But it's love. What do you mean you won't do that? Like, what is that? Right? And, after more experience, I understand a lot about the meaning of that, even though I still think it's a ridiculous song. I understand the meaning, and that because I understand that going into the relationships, I go in with the hope that we're going to be able to work things out. But I understand that just because I love that person and I care deeply about them doesn't mean that we are a good fit to be together. And one of the things that I try to avoid early on is rushing forward with the relationship. So a lot of people, guys, tend to do this where they get really excited at the beginning of the relationship. New sexual partners are often extremely exciting just for the novelty alone. And of course, because you haven't spent that much time with them, they haven't done anything to disappoint you or upset you yet. So, everything seems really good in the beginning. And because of that, things move really fast and you can become really emotionally invested and start to project so much positivity into the future potential of this relationship. Whereas I enter relationships with maybe, I wouldn't call it cynicism by any means, but I enter in with the understanding of I should enjoy this relationship for what it is, but I don't know how far it's going to go because I don't know what kind of mismatches we might encounter in the future. Any kind of trip or journey where you have a destination in mind, but you don't know what kind of detours are going to crop up in the middle of the way. And on the way, you don't know if you're going to have the situation where you two can overcome to move forward in the same direction, or if you're going to have to diverge and go in different directions. And so because I enter into a relationship with the understanding that we have a goal of finding someone who we can be with forever, but also understanding that what it will take for us to be together forever is unknown in the beginning of the relationship. So we can be hopeful and we can think of the other person as having good intentions. That is another key. A lot of people get involved into a relationship and they get attached to someone, and then they think that the other person is systematically trying to sabotage the relationship to get at them in particular. And I have one particular client who comes to mind right when I think about that. But many people seem to think that. That is not typically how it works. Typically how it works is everyone wants to find someone they can be with forever, and it's about navigating and negotiating their way to that outcome, and them having the capacity to be a good negotiator. And to be a good negotiator means that they can express what they want, what they need, in a way that isn't damaging to the relationship. It means doing their best to understand what they want so that when they communicate it, it's actually correct. And that's not easy. I mean, especially, at all ages, people don't know themselves as well as they think they know themselves. Because a lot of the times, the best way we can know ourselves isn't by thinking about ourselves, it's by watching ourselves. But we have to watch ourselves over time in many different situations before we can really understand what we're like. And of course, there's also the person may not have the capacity to give you what you want, even if they really want to. And that is painful to understand if you're the person that you're not capable of giving the other person what they really want. That can be painful to acknowledge that you have some deficiencies. But the other thing is, are you not able to give them what they want because you can't? And I mean can't as in it's actually impossible for you to do so? Or is it because there are other things that you would have to trade off that you're not willing to trade off? And if that's the case, it's unfair to be upset at the other person. It's like, okay, they want certain things. I'm not willing to make the sacrifices necessary to give them those things because that would make me unhappy and make me miserable. And it's just like, okay, well then we can't be together. And so if you go into a relationship with that mindset that you want it to work out, you know the other person wants it to work out, and the relationship is a process of discovery to see if that relationship can be something that you can negotiate and navigate to the future indefinitely, then if things don't work out and you do have a breakup, then you can end it both with the sadness that you two couldn't manage to maintain that relationship, but also with the understanding that each of you tried your best, and even if that person hurt you in various ways, you can be sure that that was not their ultimate goal. That was their best attempt at the time to reach that goal of being with you forever. And they just failed. And the same goes for you. So you can forgive yourself for the mistakes that you've made, learn from them, and go forward into the next relationship negotiation from a better place.